What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another World Cup 2022 fantasy video, and in this one it's my team selection for the quarterfinals. So I'm going to go through how the team is currently lining up, which transfers I've already made, which ones I'm thinking about doing before the games kick off, and of course we'll talk through captaincy. Before all that, I'll take you through how I did in the round of 16. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. So round of 16, 76 points. That's taken my total points to 256, and my overall rank is just inside the top 25k. So nothing special, but nothing awful either. I'm fairly happy with it. And really, obviously Fernandes got an assist last night. It was really outside of that. Just the forwards, Messi, Richarlison, and Mbappe all came away with something, and the England boys that got me my points this week. And when I did that original team selection video for the round of 16, I think I only had 2 England players and 4 French players, and I flipped that around before the deadline because ultimately, again, it was a reminder to myself this is supposed to be fun. And although I haven't tweeted much about how I've tweeted a bit about England, but not really how kind of confident I am with them, and obviously I've avoided tweeting about it's coming home too much, but I was quietly confident going into that Senegal game that there was a clean sheet on offer and a few goals as well. So for Saka to get 10, Bellingham 6, Shaw and Maguire 6 as well, that was pretty nice. It's obviously going to be a much tougher game against France, but it is what it is. I went for them in the round of 16 and it worked well. With my captaincy, I had it on Messi with 7 points. To be honest, with 7 points, you could have decided to stick. That wouldn't necessarily been a bad decision. But again, short format game. I couldn't be bothered to stick with 7 points. But unfortunately, I forgot to put it on Mbappe. I was already thinking about putting on an England player anyway. But I think had I checked my phone before the French game, I probably would have just put it on Mbappe. But I was travelling. I was going over to watch the England game and stuff like that. So I only caught the France game from about 10 or 20 minutes in. And because of that, I just forgot to change captaincy. It is what it is. I'm not that bothered about it. It did mean I get to put it on Harry Maguire, which I was happy about. Shame he couldn't get his bullet header, but I only lost 1 point from going Messi to Maguire. And who knows, Maguire might get the captaincy again in the quarterfinals. Obviously, Mbappe, brilliant. I don't know whether I'm going to stick with him for the quarterfinals. I'll talk about that later. But a 15-pointer, probably the best player of the tournament so far. Richarlison was just too good to not have in. Like, Brazil's number 9 for 7.5 million is just too good to turn down. So at one point, I was trying to fit Harry Kane in the side. But by downgrading to, like, in price-wise at least, downgrading to Richarlison, that let me get more money elsewhere, including Fernandes in midfield, who also chipped in with the assist. So most of the players I picked have gone through to the next round. Sandro was a bad pick, and again, this is what happens. Like, I really like short format fantasy games where you get to make substitutions and captaincy changes and stuff like that, but it also reminds me why I do not want this for FPL, because it's so easy to forget. So for the Brazil game, for example, I wasn't able to check before the game the lineup, and obviously Sandro wasn't in there. Had I known that, I would have probably swapped. Well, I would have swapped into someone else. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I would have definitely gone to Guerreiro, who scored for Portugal, but he was on my mind when I was putting my team together. So you never know. They didn't keep the clean sheet anyway, so it wasn't that big of an issue. But yeah, I kept Sandro. It didn't really matter in the end because he went on the bench with nothing. Hernandez won, Marquinhos won as well. So it wasn't the end of the world. But had I checked that, I would have obviously swapped him to someone else. So overall, pretty good for the round of 16. Obviously, much tougher matches now in the quarterfinals. A lot of the favourites for the games in the round of 16 went through, apart from Spain, so almost got to go. Let's see how we're shaping up for the quarterfinals. So I said that I've already made some transfers. I actually did them before the end of the Portugal game. That way, the transfers came out of my round of 16 budget rather than the allocation that I get for the quarterfinals. This means that I've still got 5 transfers to use for the quarterfinals if I need to, either before the deadline or I can use them during the match day. So you know by now, if you take out one player that hasn't played yet for someone else that hasn't played yet, that new player will start scoring you points for that match day. So I've got 5 transfers if I get stuck. Because I did it during the game, I didn't really have too much time to think about it. I needed to get it done before the final whistle. One of the moves was Sandro to Guerreiro. Now, Sandro might start, right? And it is the first game of the quarterfinal fixture list, Brazil versus Croatia. So if you own him and you haven't moved him on yet, you might as well see if he plays. Because if he does, you can just hold on to him. And if not, you can then move him on. But like I said, I wanted to use one of my transfers from the round of 16 budget, which is why I went early. I think if you look at the the fixture list for the quarterfinals, I would say England versus France is quite close. I know that everybody outside of England probably has France as the favourite, so do the bookies, and I get that, but I think it's quite close. I don't think they're clear favourites or anything like that, and I think it's similar with Netherlands versus Argentina, whereas for Brazil versus Croatia, Brazil are strong favourites, and I would say it's probably the same for Portugal versus Morocco as well, where Portugal are going to be the favourites in that game. So doing Sandro to Guerreiro, I don't think there's a huge amount of issues there. I didn't have a Portugal defender anyway, and I've got two Brazilian defenders in Alisson and Marquinhos, so I was happy enough with that move. We know Guerreiro's attacking. We saw his goal against Switzerland. I've owned him for Champions League fantasy this year for Dortmund. He got me a goal there as well. So the guy just is a very attacking fullback. So I think against Morocco, that is a good option. Morocco obviously done really well. They've knocked out Spain, but I think Portugal, you know, if they play like they did against Switzerland, they're going to be too much to handle. I think they dropped Ronaldo. Dalot played instead of Cancelo. I cannot see the manager making too many changes before the quarter-final after you've just won, what was it, like 6-1 or something crazy like that. So Guerreiro looks like a good option. Outside of that, I don't think there's a huge amount I need to change. Like Maguire and Shaw, I'm not going to get rid of them. I want to stick with my full allocation of England players. So I've got 4, can actually have 5 now from One Nation for this. So I'll talk about my other transfers in a minute. So Shaw and Maguire are in. I've got Hernandez. So if England do go out, which I hope doesn't happen, but if they do, obviously I'll carry him through to the semi-final. And like I've already said, if we're talking about strong favourites, Alisson and Marquinhos are going to be right up there. And look, it's the knockout rounds. If Brazil are kind of 1-2-0 up, Croatia are going to absolutely have to go for it, which means they might concede more, but they might nick a goal as well, just like Switzerland did against Portugal last night. That can happen. At this point, we're into the quarterfinals. Most of the teams left are the strongest teams that are in the World Cup. So if you don't get clean sheets from your defenders, it just is what it is. You've just got to back the teams that are there. I think Portugal and Brazil probably the best odds for clean sheets in the quarterfinals. And then if Alisson doesn't get anything against Croatia, I've got Martinez for Argentina against the Netherlands instead. So I think defence looking pretty good. I don't know if I guess I've got a few attacking players there. Hernandez, Maguire, Shaw and Guerreiro are attacking enough. Maybe not Marquinhos so much. And obviously goalkeepers, it is what it is. You just hope they get a few saves along the way. So that's my defence and goalkeepers. Let's look at midfielders. So I do have 0.5 million in the bank now. Now Sandro to Guerreiro, they're both the same price at 5 million. But I've also made a midfield transfer, which is Olmo for Spain, who was 8 million, for Perisic, obviously with Croatia, for 7.5 million. Now I know I'm probably going to have to move Perisic on for the semi-finals because I expect Brazil are going to win that game. But I think for 7.5 million, outside of the players that I already own, I don't think there was a huge amount of other options that I could have gone for. And I didn't have the money to upgrade Olmo. If I had 0.5 million to go up to an 8.5 million player, I probably would have just looked at Phil Foden, but I've gone for Perisic instead. And look, if Croatia do get the win over Brazil, at least I've got one of their kind of main attackers already in the team. And again, I wasn't really thinking that much about it because it was before the Portugal game ended. I do have 5 transfers, so if I think of something clever to do with my team, I could still move Perisic on before he plays, but I think for 7.5 he looks like a pretty good option. There's not too much I can do with Rodrigo de Paul. We know that already. He's only 5 million. Bellingham and Saka are going to keep their place. I'm not sure how England are going to line up against France, but I'm pretty confident that Bellingham and Saka are both going to play. I think the only thing I could see Southgate doing is possibly move into a back 5 so that he can have Trippier as the right wing back and Kyle Walker as the right centre back, with Kyle Walker's only job to watch Mbappe and not let him pass. I don't know. Southgate's played with a back 4 the whole tournament so far. We saw in the Euros, the Euro for 2020, that he did change formation a little bit. So against Germany he played a back 5, against Italy he played a back 5 as well, but in the other 2 games, Denmark and Ukraine during the knockouts, he played a back 4. So I'm not sure what he's going to do against France. Does he change what's obviously been working really well throughout the tournament? Does he go for that back 5 in the hope that Trippier and Walker can stop Mbappe? Who knows? But even if that happens, I just don't see how Bellingham can get dropped, and it will almost certainly be a 3-4-3 rather than a 3-5-2, which means that Saka should still play, because I think defensively he's just pretty good, and I think that's why Southgate is in, right? Yes, obviously you want your wide players to be great going forward, but if they can provide a little bit of defensive stability as well, that helps, and I think that's why he likes Saka. So I'm pretty sure they're both going to start. And then the only other one is Fernandes, and I think with Ronaldo likely to not start again, he'll probably come on at some point, but he's likely not to start. Fernandes should be on penalties, and obviously he's just had a really good World Cup so far, and we've just said how good Portugal have looked. I'm sure they can go and get a few goals against Morocco, and who's to say that he won't be involved. So I'm looking at on the actual World Cup fantasy screen about other midfielders I could go for. Like, the problem with France is a lot of their attackers are all listed as forwards. So there's not really too many options I can go for there. Netherlands, possibly someone like Bergwijn, but who knows if he's even going to get decent minutes or anything like that. So not really an option. Then you got Paqueta at Brazil. He could come in. Maybe I could have gone for him instead of Perisic. But I just think, although he scored for Brazil, I think Perisic is, I don't know, not necessarily. I think if Brazil and Croatia were playing the same opponent, just your average opponent, then Perisic probably got more chance of scoring. But I guess Brazil are the favourites for that game. So maybe I should have gone for Paqueta instead. But I think Perisic is a perfectly good option. And Modric is more expensive. And then you look at Argentina, the only real other midfielder, I guess, is someone like Di Maria, if he's fit and available and plays from the start. But I just don't see a huge amount of other options for my team. Maybe I'm missing someone. If I am, leave me a comment below. But I think ultimately that midfield looks pretty good. And this is why I didn't save my wildcard for the quarterfinals, because as long as you back the favourites for the most part, they usually get through. There's not necessarily a huge amount of upsets, and therefore you've got enough transfers to deal with it, especially when you can use transfers in the round of 16 like I did for a player that was locked, for another player that was locked, but they then obviously come in for you for the next match day. So that's what I did. So there's just too many transfers to go around to worry about saving your wild card. So now, if you have saved it, fair enough, but I just didn't think I need it. And I'm not sure there's a huge amount I would change with this team as it stands. So that's the midfield. Again, if I've missed anyone, let me know, because I do have 5 transfers to use if I need them. And then we've got the forwards, and I'm sure a lot of you went with this same front three, which is Mbappe, Richarlison and Messi. Messi is currently my captain against the Netherlands. I'm not sure whether I should go for Richarlison instead, maybe get Neymar in. That is something that I could do and captain him, but I'm almost certainly going to go for Messi. And if he doesn't get enough points, I'm not sure right now what kind of points I would take. I think if he got 9 or more, I'd probably stick. If he gets anything lower than that, then I will probably twist. And then it's who to put it on instead, because after Messi plays, it's the Portugal-Morocco game, so I could go for Fernandes, but the reality is I will probably wait for that France-England game, and I won't put it on Mbappe. I'll probably put it on an England player instead, but I'm just not sure right now which one. Richarlison's going to stay because he's only 7.5 million. It's too good value to turn down against Croatia, so he'll be in the side. The only one is Mbappe, right? And as I said earlier, you can now have 5 players from one nation in your team for the quarterfinals. So I've got 4 England players, Maguire, Saka, and obviously Shaw and Bellingham on the bench, because the France-England game is the last game of the quarterfinals. I'm pretty sure I'm going to do Mbappe to Harry Kane. Now, for any of you that are kind of taking this game seriously, etc., you should not be selling Mbappe against England. I think France are the favourites for that game. Mbappe's been brilliant, probably the best player in the tournament so far, so you shouldn't be removing him. And if you've got a different captain before that, like a Neymar, Messi, whoever it is, and they don't perform, Mbappe should probably be the one that you change captain to. But again, this is supposed to be a bit of fun. I want to back England. They've done really well. I think we can beat France. I don't think we're the favourites, but I don't think it's too far apart. I think if you think back to previous tournaments, like if England had beaten Croatia, I think France would have been up here and England would probably, I'm trying to see where my hands are on the screen, probably down here. Now I think France is still up here, but I think England are much closer. I know some people will disagree with that, but that team and that squad is looking good. So I'm going to do Mbappe to Kane. And look, if it doesn't work out, I've got a load of transfers to use for the kind of semi-finals anyway. I can get Mbappe back in. I want my full allocation of England players, and I feel like that is the easiest way to go about it, because the only other way is to do Richarlison to someone like Rashford if he starts, but we're not going to know that by the time Brazil play. And obviously Perisic could become Foden, and maybe he will start again. Obviously he did well in the game against Senegal, but I'd have to find 0.5 million from somewhere else, and there's not really too many places I want to do it. So the easiest way for me is to do Mbappe to Kane. That'll also free up another 0.5 million, so I'd have $1 million to spend elsewhere. Again, I'm not really sure whether I'll actually bother using that. I might just save it for the semi-finals and see what happens, but that's probably what I'm going to do. So Messi will be my captain. I'm fairly certain that I'll do Mbappe to Kane, and then Harry Kane will probably become my captain, unless I go for Maguire again, because why the hell not? If you've enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We'll have 2 more team selection videos for the World Cup to come, for the semi-finals and then the final, and then outside of that we'll be back to the normal FPL content. So if you haven't subscribed and you play Fantasy Premier League, make sure you do, because there's loads of content to come the rest of December, and then obviously throughout the rest of this season as well. Thank you very much for watching. Give it a like, hit subscribe, and I'll catch you again soon.